should start.
Yeah, alrighty.
Okay. Shalom Aleichem, thank you again for making this change in time. A special thank you to Mati Zeitlin and to Svi Goldring, Nachman Fried, my Rebbe Reb Chaim Kramer, Rietti, everyone else who's involved in enabling us to learn together. We're in Torah Dalet. We're up to paragraph Vav. Hopefully we'll finish Vav and Zayin today. By way of fast review, paragraph Aleph introduced us to the idea that real das is to know that there's no difference between Chesed and Gvura. Those are the ways we interpret what happens to us in this world, but actually they're both sourced in the exact same place, which is from Hashem, who's only Ava. We saw that in paragraph Dalet. So paragraph base said, so how do you come to this das where you don't make any chiluk, no distinction between good and bad, it's all good. So paragraph base tells us that every time we do an aveira, the language there is avonos, we actually give kayak to the malchus of the akum of the nations. It's not really akum, it means the umais, that's the actual correct text. And by doing so, Hashem's malchus kaviyachol is diminished. Because it's diminished, we've got to retrieve it. How do we retrieve it? So that goes to paragraph Hey. I'm skipping Dalet for now because it's a kind of repetition of Aleph. Paragraph Hey tells us, how do you retrieve the Malchus? And the answer is, surprisingly, you've got to do vidui dvarim. You have to admit one's mistakes, dafka in front of a Talmid Chacham. And then where we got into Hey, where we explained that the reason why we have to do that is because when a person does Averas, the Averas are actually etched. There's a Rishima, there's actually a Roshem, some sort of an actual residue in writing of our Averas on the bones of a human being. And that remains there until one has done Vidui Dvarim in front of a veritable Talmid Chacham, and that's when the oisius of the Avera, which are etched on the surface of the bones, that's when they are then reconfigurated into a positive assembly of the letters. And we mentioned, let's say, Pesha, which is an Aveira done b'mezid, and Lahachis becomes Shefa, that we actually open up the tap of Hashem's showering blessings upon us from doing Teshuvah on a Pesha. And we can actually then reconfigurate our all the not good things that are written on our bones. We mentioned last week that the entire body actually reconfigurates itself all the time. The entire body, molecularly speaking, biologically speaking, is constantly renewing itself. The skin, I think, takes about every 7 weeks. The skin is completely renewed, and the bones take somewhere between 7 and 10 years. So that's where, if something's going to be etched for a longer period of time, it's definitely going to be in the bones. But if a person hasn't done teshuvah, and in this case, vidui dvarim in front of a Talmid Chacham, that etching will remain. In the same way that a scar, when the crust falls away from a cut on the skin will show you the exact same configuration of the lines and on the skin, and you just get a new layer of skin, but it's still the same body. So we're now going into Vav, paragraph Vav, where we're going to understand what is the mechanic, so to speak, that activates through going to a Talmid Chacham and doing Vidui Dvarim. What is it about that act that actually retrieves the power we gave to the wrong Malchus, the Sitra Achra, through the nations, who then have power because of our Averas to actually harm us or to do Gzeras against us. So how does it work that we go to the Talmid Chacham and he has this special kayak to actually retrieve the lost Malchus that we gave to the other side? So in paragraph Vav, we're going to see now that this Vidui Dvarim, the Zeh is referring to Vidui Dvarim in front of a Talmid Chacham. Bechinas, this connects Hachazaras HaMalchus L'Sharsha, returning the Malchus back to its original source. Ki Sharish HaMalchus Hu Eish. What is the original source? We're going to see that there's three things really are being made synonymous. Eish is fire. The word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called fire. The Torah is etched on white fire from black, white fire with black on black. So that the idea really is that even Malchus, we're going to see in a few moments, is going to bring a proof from a very sad story with Navat. Yeravam was his son, of what fire signifies, what it represents. What is the viduit varim of the Talmid Chacham? How does that actually bring back the Malchus to its original source? That's the Malchus of Hashem. Ki shorish Malchus hu eish. The real source of Malchus is actually fire. As our sages tell us in the Gemara Sanhedrin, page 101b, Lama ta Navat. Navat was actually, that wasn't his real name. His real name was Sheva ben Bichri, and he was a Rasha. The pasuk there in Shmuel base, I think it is. Yeah, Shmuel base, Perek base, pasuk Chaf. So it's book 2, chapter 2, verse 20. So 2:20. There, the pasuk tells us that he was Bilial. Bilial is an acronym for Bili Oil, Malchut Shemaim. He lacked the sense of responsibility to perform Hashem's mitzvah, so he did not have Ol Malchut Shemaim, and the Targum on his name is Geva Rishia. He was a wicked man. Now the Gemara, what Rav Nachman is going to explain here, what was his mistake when Avshalom rebelled against his father. The rebellion didn't last very long, and Avshalom died a pretty horrific death. He got kapara to a large extent from the 10 spears in his heart for the 10 averas he did with David HaMelech's wives, and there was some other, was not a spear or some other weapon that went through him that also helped be a kapara, and then David HaMelech pulled him out all 7 levels of Gehenna, which is quite extraordinary, to be discussed another time. So at the end of this, thousands and thousands of Jews had lost their lives, but finally David HaMelech had succeeded against this rebellion, and almost all of Klal Yisrael realized, okay, David HaMelech really is the Melech. But this one individual, Navat, really, Sheva ben Bichri, he's the only one who said, we've got no chelik with David, we're not accepting him as king. So what foolishness allowed him to make such a mistake where it became pretty evident that David HaMelech now prevailed over his own son, and all Klal Yisrael are coming together with David finally and making him king over the whole Jewish people. So what was his mistake? So Lama Ta'a Navat, what was the mistake he made to think that he was going to be king instead of David? Shira Shiyatz Eish Ma'amasai. He saw fire come out from his bris. So the Aruch there on that Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kuf Aleph, tells us that it was in a dream that he saw this. It wasn't physically he saw the fire. He saw the fire in his dream, and he misinterpreted. When a person has a nagia, he will interpret his dream according to his nagia. His nagia is he wanted to believe he was really going to be a melech, and so he took the fire which represents Malchus as it's going to come from me. His mistake was that the fire came out of the bris. The bris wasn't the fire. So that means his son, Yeravam, was the one who was actually going to be one of the kings against Shlomo Melech's son. But so that was a mistake. That was a mistake he made. So he misinterpreted his own experience in that dream. Torah nikras eish. The Torah itself goes by the name of fire. Shemisham hamalchus. It's from fire that comes out Malchus, and he explains why there is this synonymous relationship. What's the connection between Malchus and fire? Because the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, Perek Gimel, pasuk Chav Tes, Haloichoi dvari ke'esh. Hashem declares, my word, Loshen Yachid, my word is like fire. So it declares Hashem. Now that particular Perek, Bezrat Hashem, when we get into the Eon part of the Torah, we'll go into it much more detail. But that particular Perek is actually very important. It's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself declares what's with all these Nevi'ei Sheker. they're claiming they had a dream, and they tell everyone their dream. That's not how I communicate to my Navi MS. When I communicate with a Navi MS, they're jolted like they've been hit by fire. Now fire is all-consuming. Aish leaves nothing behind except ash. That's where the word, I do believe, word ash comes from, aish, in the English word ash. It's totally all-consuming. Anyone who saw how Twin Towers just went down, where is it? So in what's called the world of the conservation of energy and mass, there actually is no loss of mass or energy, it's just transformed. So now fire has the power to destroy, apparently, everything in its path. And Hashem is saying, my word is like fire. That means to say, when I give a nevuah, I'm not telling you what might happen. I'm telling you what will happen. Because I know the future, I control the future. There's nothing that can stand in front of my word. So when a Navi Sheker comes along and gives his chalaymas and tries to persuade people, it's hevel, it's complete hot air and a waste of space, waste of time. So Hashem says, my fire, my word is like fire. That means to say, we're not going to learn that Be'in now, but it's relevant, and that is that every nevuah Hashem ever gave, you just have to wait for it to happen. Just sit back and watch the show. Because Hashem promised, I'm going to give you the land. He's promised to Avram Avinu, Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Zayin, Pasuk Ches, in Parshas Lech Lecha, I'm going to give you the land. Your nation will be, I'm making a bris olam. That is a covenant, a contract forever. Forever is a long time. And this time that he's giving this contract in Bris Bein Absarim, Avram Avinu has no children. He doesn't even have any children for another 30 years after the Bris Bein Absarim. But Hashem says, my word is like fire. Anything that tries to stand up in front of it, whether it's a Nimrod, whether it's Mitzrayim, a Paro, whether it's Haman, whether it's the Persian Empire, the Babylonian, it makes no difference, the Roman Empire, it makes no difference how powerful they are. My word is like fire. If they stand up against me, they'll get consumed. So you have an amazing advantage wherever you are in history. The further you are in history, the more you can declare Hashem's word is like fire, because anyone who tried to stop us got consumed. And you're seeing this right now in the world today. The Torah Nikras Eish, the Torah, we're in Torah Dalet, and we're in paragraph Vav, we're about a couple lines in. The Torah Nikras Eish, the Torah is called fire. You can't play with fire, get hurt, get burnt. Shemisham HaMalchus, it's from fire that the Malchus comes. Kamoshikasav HaLotoi Tvari Keish. My word is like fire. Nothing can stand up against it. If I promise you that you're going to go into exile if you don't keep my Torah, you'll go into exile. But if I also promise you, because it's a nevuah, that you're going to come back after 70 years, count and see for yourself. Nothing will stand up. Even Achashverosh can be Melech al Kol Olam. Nothing, Haman, nobody, nothing can stand up against me. And that's where we can really strengthen our emunah, where we see throughout history, Hashem has kept his promises. You'll be thrown out of your land, not once, twice, 70 years in between, you'll be spread throughout the whole world. That's in Parshas Vayischanan, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Lamed Chaf Vav onwards. You'll be spread throughout the whole world. You'll be hated by all the nations. All this we know, not even with Emunah Pshuta, we know, B'das Shalema, that all this has happened. It's simply history, his story. So nothing can stand up against my fire. Ukasiv.
The Pasuk word occasion, the Torah Nikra is or the Misham Malchus.
It's
referring to Torah or to Malchus?
Both. Ki malachim yimloiku. Now ukasiv, and it's written. So you're right. It's referring to two things. He's making three things really the same thing: Torah, which is Hashem's word, and Malchus, which we saw from Nevat. He misunderstood that the Eish he thought was his Malchus. It was going to be his son's Malchus. The Ikar Torah hem tamdei hachamim. So I didn't finish that pasuk. Uksiv bi malachim yimloiku. That's a pasuk in Mishlei, Parakes, pasuk Tes Vav. In me, malachim will be crowned. Meaning to say, when Hashem says in me, he's talking about the fact that he and the Torah are one thing. So it means through my Torah, kings will be crowned. So the kings are not self crowned. They don't become kings on their own. They're only crowned by the authority of the Torah, which is Mi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, Bi Melachim Yimlochu means that it's through my Torah that the kings will be crowned. That's where they get their authority. It's not their authority.
It's crowned or ruled?
Ruled.
In other words, Yimlochu means they will rule, no?
Yes.
But in order to rule, they have to be crowned.
Yimlochu, they will rule because they were crowned by my Torah. My Torah is what gives them authority. It's not because they won a popular vote. Like someone said, let's do away with democracy. All those in favor, put your hand up. I don't like political jokes. I've seen too many of them get elected. So Bi Melachim Yimlochu means that the Torah is what gives authority to, and in Jewish law, being a king was really Bediavad. It wasn't really the first option. Shmuel Navi was persuaded, so to speak, by Klal Yisrael that they wanted to have a king like the other nations. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu did put in the Torah, mostly in Parak Yud Zayin, in Parashat Shoftim, the laws of a king. He has to have a Sefer Torah that he wrote for himself, and he wears another one wherever he goes. He can never be anywhere without it, except, of course, the shower, bathroom, go to the mikveh, he takes it off. But otherwise, he has to have a Sefer Torah wherever he goes. He's not allowed more than 18 wives. I can't afford more than one myself, but he's not allowed more than 18. And he can't have too much money, only enough money for his entire entourage and for his army. And that, of course, is very vague, but it means as big an army, a military, enough that will scare surrounding nations from wanting to start up with the Jewish king. So there are a number of laws that apply to Jewish kings. He's not allowed too much money and not too many horses. And the last item basically is he has the right to actually, on his own, decide certain cases of death penalty without going through the regular protocol of Sanhedrin. But he's still ruled by the Torah. The Torah is what's giving him that right, and it's not hefka. So the essential piece here is that Eish is Torah, and it's the word of Hashem. It's the same thing, and it also refers to Malchus. Because if be melachim yimloichu v'ikar Torah hem al Talmidei Chachamim. What is the Torah? The Ikar Torah is not the Torah shebichtav. The Ikar Torah is the Torah Shebal Peh, and the Torah Shebal Peh is what gives credibility and meaning to the Torah shebichtav. The Torah Shebal Peh is 100% tali on the Talmidei Chachamim, starting with Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua, the Zkanim, the Anshe Knesset Agdola, the Nevi'im in between, and it wasn't until Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, made a Hoirah Shah, it's the last Mishnah in Brachas, where one of the Eis Lasos, Lashem, Hefeiru Torah Secha, is in reference to the fact that the Torah Shebal Peh was never meant to be written down. It's Gemara in Gittin Daf Samach. It was actually an Issa writing. You're not supposed to write Kisvu Hadvarim Ha'ela. These words should be written down, but the Torah Shebal Peh should not be written down. But there was a Hoirah Shah, there was an emergency situation. Chazal saw we're about to go into the last of the 4 exiles, and in that exile will be spread throughout the whole world. And if we didn't put in some form, Matt, the Torah Shebal Peh in writing, we would lose it entirely. And this was, just so you understand it, the Talmidei Chachamim is the Torah. Because the Torah Shebichtav, that's Klaf and Oisius, is a tremendous Kedusha. But what gives any meaning to a single Pasuk? And the answer is only the Torah Shebal Peh. Well, who do I rely on for the Torah Shebal Peh? Oh, that's the Chachamim, that's the Masorah. So to put the Masorah in writing was very dangerous, because that means now it's open for discussion. But Rabbeinu HaKadosh was so brilliant in how, it doesn't need my haskama, but in how he wrote the Torah Shebal Peh and the Mishnayos. It was really based on his Rebbe, which is Rebbe Meir, whose Lashon came from his Rebbe, which is Rebbe Kiva. Rebbe Kiva, he's the one, it's the Gemara also in is it Gittin or Yavamas? I think it's Yavamas, sorry. Also in Yavamas, where he's called Oitzer Blum. He was a bursting Oitzer, storehouse of Torah. He started at 40, but he did an organized way of learning, because whatever he was taught at night time, he would organize that learning. Oh, this is Mishnayos, this is Brises, this is Agadata, these are Psukim. Gemara didn't exist yet. So Rashi brings this in. I think it's Yevamos Daf, also Daf Samach, if I'm not mistaken, and it's also in Avos Reb Nosson. I don't remember which perek, but it could be Vav, I think, where it talks about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, he organized his learning, and it was the organized learning of Rabbi Akiva that he passed down to all his Talmidim, but specifically Rabbi Meir, and it was the Lashon of Rabbi Meir that was communicated to Rabbeinu Kadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. This is all explained. This is not my chidushim. This is all explained in Igeres Rabbi Shvir Gaon. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he did an amazing thing. He took all Tarek mitzvahs, which is the skeleton of Kol HaTorah Kula, and he divided it into 6 sections, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, divided the 6 sections into 63 Masechtas, and every single Masechta, every single tractate was then subdivided into Prokim. Every perek was given a name, and every perek was then subdivided into numbered paragraphs called Mishnayos. So extraordinary organization. Yesh Sheitel Mishnah. So the Mishnah was written with such a cryptic language, you couldn't understand it. There was missing information. There's not a single Mishnah that basically makes any sense on its own. Where did you get? Why are you starting speaking about Kriyat Shema? In the evening? What about the morning? How much of Kriyat Shema? And if you weren't confused by the opening statement, there's no Hagdama there. Well, you can say Shema when the Kohanim come home to eat their Truma. Well, one second. First tell me there's a mitzvah called Kriyat Shema. Tell me if it's in the morning, it's in the evening. We're going to deal with the evening first because the Shachba of Kamecha, it's in that order. But what's this with Kohanim? You didn't tell me anything. It's Kohanim, Leviim, Yisrael, and Truma. You didn't tell me anything about the agricultural taxes. How do you write this way? I'm completely confused. That was the whole point. You're forced to think. So all the psukim force you to think, and you don't know anything from the psukim. Nothing. You can't figure out almost any pasuk pshat in any pasuk in the entire Torah. You need the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Where do you go for that? Oh, you go to the Talmid Chachamim. So the Talmid Chachamim is the heartbeat of the Torah. So it's literal. It's not like a fancy. It's not a metaphor. It's 100% literal. And that's why the writing of the Mishnah and the Gemara was in some ways it was actually a tragedy, because now it's possible for a person to become a Talmid Chacham by reading Art Scroll, as opposed to the real deal. What's the real deal? What does Talmid Chacham actually mean? What's the literal translation?
Student of wisdom.
A student of a wise person. So who are you bringing attention to?
To the wise person.
You're bringing attention to who he learned from. It's not a shvach so much on the Talmid Chacham. It's a shvach on who's the person that you learned under. Where do you get Shimush Chachamim? So that's a Gemara in Brachas, near the beginning, around Daf Vav, was it Daf Zayin, I think now? My memory's not as sharp as it used to be. Where it says, Gedola Shimusha Shel Torah, Yosem Elimuda. Greater is Shimush Chachamim than learning. Why? Because how do you know how to understand this pasuk? How do you know how to understand this Mishnah? How do you know to apply the machlokes in the Gemara? Which way do I go? How do you know to apply it? And the answer is, if a person had Shimush Chachamim, it's to that degree that they are living with someone, someone who knows how to apply the Torah on a daily life. How to read, how to get on with his wife, how to get on with the kids, how to raise the children. So Talmid Chachamim is literal, it's 100% literal. So this makes sense now why the next words in Rav Nachman are the following. Kamosh Amru Chachmeinu Zal, as our sages tell us in Gemara and Bankas, Stav Chaf Beis, Amud Beis, Kama Tipshoi, how foolish are these foolish people? They're very much but stand up in front of a Sefer Torah. But when it comes to someone who's a veritable Talmid Chacham, they're not standing up for him. 1 second, which is more real? I need the Talmid Chacham to tell me how to live as a Jew. The Sefer Torah is headlines, but the Pratim, that's in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Reb Shamshul Fel Hirsch gives a beautiful mashal that when you go to a lecture, can you imagine ever going to a lecture? And you take notes of the lecture. So you go home afterwards and you say, this is a great lecture I'm going to tell you, and you say it over to your family, and you say, I'll just give you my notes. Now, why is it that the people in your family are not going to have a hard time reconstructing the lecture based on the notes? Well, first of all, I don't know if they can read my handwriting. Secondly, I've got this color-coded here, asterisks here, so if I'm not there to explain what this is, you cannot reconstruct the lecture from the notes. So says Rab Shamshul Phil Hirsch, the Torah Bechtav are the notes to the lecture. The Torah Baal Peh is the lecture. And who am I totally on to understand that? Oh, that's the Chachamim. So Talmid Chachamim is everything. And that's why it was a tragedy to a certain extent that the Torah Baal Peh had to be written down, because now there's a chance people could learn from Sfarim as opposed to the real Shimush, because that exposure to how a tzaddik and a Talmid Chacham lives, that's where it really matters. When we get to Vidui Dvarim, Be'iyun, we're going to look at this more carefully, because it's a huge part, a very, very piece. The Christians stole it from us. Anything they've got, most of it stolen from us, and then corrupted. It wasn't they took it and kept it that way. They changed everything. So this now is going on to an extended point when the pasuk tells us in Bamidbar, Perek Lamed Aleph, pasuk Kaf Gimel, when it came to Midian, we got the spoils from a war with Midian, and we were given the mitzvah of Tevilas Kelim, that when you get a keli that's metal from a non-Jew, in this case it was booty, you're not allowed to use it for cooking. You have to tovel it. It needs to be toveled. But that's only after it's been koshered. How do you kosher it? Anything, any keli, any vessel, fork, knife, receptacle that was used with fire, it was a pot that's placed on top of fire, then the way to kosher it is taviru be'esh, then you have to pass it through fire. Dava zebekinas malchus. The word dava is in reference to malchus. It happens to be in the original text of Likutim Ran, after the word ba'esh, ta'aviru ba'esh, lelavnoi, is the language of to make it, do libun, to whiten it through the intensity of the fire. Dava zebekinas malchus. The word dava connects to malchus, because we learned earlier that the word dava is also reference to a leader. Shenimshach, the next word is also in the original manuscript, v'nishka. Shenimshach v'nishka, nishka means sunken, from the, like shkia sachama, when the sun sinks down. It doesn't sink, the sun is always there, and it's we're moving around it, or it's moving around us. It's actually both correct. I'm not going into that now, but klape us, the language of shkia sachama, is that the sun looks like it's sinking, it's going down on the horizon. Shenimshach v'nishka b'toich hatuma, that the malchus is drawn away from Hashem's malchus through our averas, and now it gets sunk into the tuma, which gives koyach to the goyim. B'toich hachamimus hayetzer, and this all comes from the fire, the heat of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is fire, as he's going to bring a proof in a few moments, that the fire inside a person to do averas, that Yetzer Hara is on fire. K'moi nura beit amram, like the Gemara in Kedushin, Pei Aleph, we'll learn it a little bit more, but even when Be'ez Hashem we get to it. Nura beit amram. Beit Amram was the house of Amram. Amram was Chasida. He was a huge Chassid, a big tzaddik, and he was relied upon that when Jewish ladies were taken, they were redeemed until they found where they had to go back home. He was the shomer. How was he shomer? So there was a ladder which took 10 people to carry. It was so heavy, and the ladies had to wait in this attic area. Then he took the ladder away so no one would mess. And then at one particular point, which the Gemara mentions over there was one Isha that was so striking that he picked up this ladder that takes 10 people, because the fire of the Taavos was so strong, and he was a tzaddik gomor, and he moved the ladder to the attic area, and he started climbing it, and halfway up he started screaming, "Fire! There's a fire! Bei Amram, in the house of Amram," and he. This was his Yetzer Tov, being Roigez Aleh Yetzer Hara, and in doing so, the Talmidim came rushing. See, where's the fire? And he said, "No, the fire is in me." There was a huge humiliation, but he did this to control himself and to be mechaper as well. So the fire is is Taavos. Ta'aviru be'esh. You got to take the Taavos of the Yetzer Hara and you got to put them through fire. Tikunoi al yedei esh. So the tikkun of the Yetzer Hara is dafka through esh. Hainu vidui dvarim lifnei Talmid Chacham. And what's that esh? The Talmid Chacham is esh because he's Torah. So by having vidui dvarim in front of the Talmid Chacham is going to enable that the fire of the Yetzer Hara will now be fired by the fire of the Torah, which is what the Talmid Chacham basically is representing. V'zeh lashon aveira. Now we can explain what this is. Zeh is referring to the word ta'aviru that we had in the pasuk earlier. That when you have a kli that's been used with fire, you got to ta'aviru, you got to put into fire. So the lashon aveira is this lashon. Shehatzeruf shel aveira. The letter combination, which we talked about a little bit before, the letters of an Aveira, every one of the Ramach, so it's Shin Samahei Aveiras of the Torah, every Loitase, that gets etched on the bones of a human being from the Aveira they did. So the Aveira, which is described in the Torah, is now etched on the bones of that person. So we mentioned that by Vidui Dvarim in front of Talmid Chacham, the actual words, chatati, peshati, whichever, and bepratias, in specifically what my aveiros were, then the letters of that vidui is now, the Talmid Chacham is able to actually create a kapara for this person, and the oisias that were etched on the bones now actually exit from the bones. So, Shatzeiruf shel haveira, oive b'torch atzmoisav. Before he's done the vidui dvarim, the letters are etched b'toich atzmoisav. Now, this is a different language than before because we always use the word al. So al means on, above, so it's not inside. B'toich means inside. Me'eva el eva. From one end, this is Lashon Aveira and Lashon Ava. It's from one end of the bone to the other. So in the Rabbi Tia, in his footnote, number 78, he quotes the Zohar in Parshas Noach, and he points out there the Zohar says the first time a person does an Aveira, the etching on the bones is right on the surface. It's a reshima. It leaves an impression. The second time a person does the same Aveira, it's etched deeper. It doesn't go right through. The third time, it's a very interesting lashon, is that now, the third time, it's a kesem, a stain. And the stain goes through the whole bone. So it's not yet a lashon of shvira. It's not actually breaking the bone, but it is a lashon that the kesem goes is you can see the stain on both sides. It's gone right through. Me'ever le'ever. It's gone right through. So personally, this struck me as exactly what Rav Nachman talks about, because he says ani nahar ha mitaher mikol aksamim. I am a river that is the mitaher for all ksamim. Now, a kesem is not a revav. Revav is a grease stain on a garment, but a kesem is a stain that's been there long enough that it goes right through the whole. And now the only way to get it out is with a lot of chemicals and a lot of bleach. Happens to be there's a sefer called Minchas Yehuda from Rav Fataya. It was a huge tzaddik Gomor, tzaddik MS. He was a Talmid Muvchak, the main student of the Ben Ish Chai. So he was relied upon for his kamayas, and he also was completely involved in hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, but for sure, hundreds of cases of ruchais that needed a tikkun, and even human beings who had been possessed by dibuks. He would work on getting them out of their body. So he did it with a lot of psukim and a lot of yichudim, whatever they are. And Rav Fataya, as he started getting more involved in this, he began to keep a written record of his conversations with the ruchais. And this is something Rav Nachman talks about as well. Rav Nachman talks about naked souls. There's such a thing as a has v'shalom, someone who leaves this world and is naked of mitzvahs. So he's got nothing to wear. So Rav Nachman talks about the tzaddik is allowed to give him a piece of his own clothing and send him on an errand, so to speak, where he can save him from kafa kelach or other terrible einshim. But what Rafatia points out is so interesting because it's what I was talking about once when I said about Einish. We don't have a word in Lashon HaKodesh for punishment. It's a Catholic and it's a very clever, very, very clever innovation because it creates a God who's a God of vengeance and anger. And it's a big problem because even though there is such a thing as Yiras Einish, there's no question. But sorry?
What about Kelkana V'Nokim?
Yeah, so Nakama is interesting. We translate it as revenge. So Fataya, he died in 1942. He was very involved in getting rid of Hitler and stopping him from coming to Eretz Yisrael. So he was a huge tzaddik. So he describes that every single step that a person has to go through, if Has v'Shalom they're Rashat, that they get Chibud HaKeva and Kafa Kelach, and then the Malachi Habala come and pull the neshama out of the grave and give them some difficult time, shall we say? And then there's Gilgal, and all that is before the schus of Gehenna. In one such story, he even describes one ruach he worked with for a long time, and gave him enough tikkunim that he was able to reduce the Kafa Kelach of several hundred years to only a few months, and then eventually he asked a different ruach if he knew about this Nosson from Gaza. He said, I just heard there was a huge celebration that everyone could hear. We thought it was a chasna of some sort, but it turned out it was actually the celebration. He's on his way to Gehenna. So Gehenna is a huge tikkun in comparison.
The town of Shatz.
Yeah.
He tried to miss out in Shatz too, I think.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
And it worked.
It's not. I don't think it's.
About it, right?
Yeah, he writes. It's in chapter 88 of Minchas Yehuda. A lot is devoted to that, and it's 160 pages, that chapter. Oh. So it's been translated as well into English by Rabbi what's it, Basri? I think Rabbi Basri in Eretz Yisrael, very reliable Mekubal and Rav. So it's a fascinating thing to get into. It's not for the faint-hearted, I'll be honest with you. But he describes there that a person should not think that Hashem is punishing a person through, and he describes Chibud HaKeva. It's really not. It's not a party. It's not a picnic. Well, for the worms maybe, but it's not a picnic. And then the Malachi Chabala, not a picnic by any stretch of the imagination. And all the different midbaris and places that a person is taken to for their hundreds and hundreds, in some cases thousands of years of Onshim. So he says the Oinesh and Kafa Kelach, which is really, really bad, and even Gehenna, all of them are cleansing agents. He even gives the mashal that if you have a brand new outfit and it gets stains all over, so you have to wash it not once, twice, 3 times. You keep washing it until it's completely out. So if the garment had a voice and it said, "Why are you treating me so badly? Why are you hurting me? Why are you putting all these chemicals and burning me?" He said, "No. I'm making you brand new again. So I can wait. You're going to look awesome." So he said that's his mashal that he gives for all these different processes. It's not einish, it's not nakama, it's a cleansing. So when Rav Nachman says ani nahar, and nahar is a very special word. It's not like a nahal. Nahar is a fast-moving river, and when you take garments into a fast-moving river, you're going to get cleaned much faster. Ani nahar mitaher. That is the purifier. Mikol aksamim. The kesim is not an ordinary stain. It's a stain that's been left in the garment long enough that it's going to take a long time to clean out. And he's saying, I can clean any stain. So it's a very, very powerful analogy. And it goes from one end of the bones to the other. So it's a stain that is completely inside the bones. Mitzvah, the word mitzvah, now what would be the tikkun for an aveira? If an aveira can create a stain that is so deep that it's right through the bones, and the bones is the physical essence of a human being, the skeleton, and it's embarrassing. It's right through the whole skeleton. So what would be the tikkun? So a tikkun of an aveira is a mitzvah. So now Rav Nachman points out, mitzvah, the word mitzvah is a lashon of hischabrus. It's actually a lashon of joining, welding, bringing together. When a person does piles and piles or you can translate it as ropes, because when you have a rope is made up of many threads, and the more threads and then the more ropes that are intertwined, the stronger it's almost impossible to cut. So the concept of chavilas of averos, the way to undo that is lots and lots of piles and piles and ropes of mitzvahs connected the averos. So Rav Atia brings a medrash in Vayikra Rabbah, I think it is, Chaf Aleph, Ois Hey, Imasisa chavilas shel averos. If a person has done many piles and piles of averos, asa connect on chavilas shel mitzvahs. So doing correspondence, lots of piles of mitzvahs, and that's how to get rid of the averos. Azai nischabru shivrei atzmoisav. When a person does chavilas of mitzvahs, now what they're going to do is actually mischaber, to bring together the bones that were either fractured or disconnected or are badly stained. When we learn this Be'ezrat Hashem Be'iyun, we're going to look at the Lashonis that he's bringing, because the Lashonis don't seem to stim perfectly. Is it shivrei atzamis? Is it stains throughout the? Are they dislocated atzamis? Are Yehuda's bones only dislocated and they were banging, rolling inside the coffin? Or was it the actual shivrei? Because we're going to see that there's the lashon of all three. So how do we reconcile that? The pasuk says in Lamed Aleph in Tehillim pasuk Chaf Aleph, Achas meheina lo nishbara, but Hashem won't allow even one of them to get broken. So Rav Fataya in the Medrash on Tehillim on that pasuk, he says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ramach Eivarim Yesh B'cha. You've got 248 limbs. V'Ramach Mitzvahs Aseh Yesh B'Torah. And there are 248 mitzvahs in the Torah, Aseis. Im Kayamta Esa Torah. If you keep my 248 mitzvahs, Anim Kayim Gufecha. You know what? I'm going to hold your body together. It's going to have a kiyum. Shenema Shomer Kol Atzmoisav. Who is the one who's guarding a person's bones? Achas Meheina Lo Nishbara. Hashem says, I won't let any of them get broken. So that's really in reference to tzaddik. But that's basically the connection. Any questions on this? Comments? We'll move to Zion. Let's see.
It seems that there's another layer over here, that by doing vidui dvarim before the tzaddik, it's not only taken for the aveira, but also for the chamimus of the Yetzirah, which would probably be a cause for a person to do the aveira again, right? So, as it seems in the Zohar, it says that a person is going to say vidui, but then do the aveira again. It's a much bigger pagam.
Right.
So if he says vidui before the tzaddik, it helps not only to be metaken what he did,
but for the future.
It's also it helps to
burn it out.
Burn out the
taiva.
The chamims that brings him to do that very too.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it takes a person's bechira, but it's probably the highest form, because it's a huge humiliation. Even the story which we haven't looked at yet, which is brought in Chaimron, which was the trigger, so to speak, for this whole Torah, with the Baal Shem Tov, who had a Talmid, who actually had done teshuvah for everything, but he was suffering terribly, called for the Baal Shem, who was a healer, to come and heal him, and he came, and on the way, he told whoever was with him that if this person does vidui dvarim, then he'll be healed immediately. If he refuses, he's going to die a very uncomfortable death. This illness will be the breaking of his bones. It's going to be horrible pain. And sure enough, when he came to him, the Baal Shem Tov said, tell me what Hashem knows, and what you know, and what I know. Meaning, you're not going to tell me any chidushim, so I'm not going to get shocked. But tell me anyway. And it's a very, very big humiliation to go to a tzaddik who you know is a real tzaddik, and then say, because a person wants to feel good in the eyes of the tzaddik. So a person has to, it's very humiliating to have to be open and honest about what one's been through or has done. And it's not said beferish, but the intimation was that he refused to say vidui dvarim because he was too ashamed. But that was the whole point. That was exactly the whole point. It's the shame of it that gives the kayach to the tzaddik to burn out the taivas in the first place. We mentioned last week, which I think you reminded me, in Perek base, Halacha base in Hilchos Teshuvah, that when he asks, it's a great question, Umahi HaTeshuvah, what is Teshuvah? Hu she'azov achay techetay, the person who did the chet has to let go of it, it's not doing it anymore. This is huge. He stopped thinking about it. That's really, really big. That's really big. And he makes a hachlata, I'm not going to do this ever again. Yazov is a lashon of aziva, means it's behind me. I've forsaken it. Like a husband is yazov es aviv es imay v'yedabek be'ishtay. So there's no going back. Marriage is supposed to be permanent. I'm out of my parents' home, and now the focus is the spouse. So it's a very powerful language. The ish aven machshava isav, and a person should get rid of all his ridiculous thoughts. Aven is a lashon of sheker in Targum. V'chein yitnachem al sha'ava, and he should also change his mind about the past. Yitnachem is a lashon of hipuch machshava. We usually follow the Christian translation, which is regret, which is a whole parsha in of itself, because it's a very, very dangerous place to go. And Rav Nachman is big on this. Huge. That regret has a huge potential to pull me down, and then I fall into atzvus and atzlus and all the worst things. So regret has to be after the aveira, way after, and after teshuvah. And Rambam says it. V'chein yisnachem al sha'ava, he should have regret, wished he never did it, on the past. Shene'emar, look at the pasuk, ki achrei shuvi nahamti. After I did teshuvah, that's when I had changed my mind. I mean, I regretted. If I'm regretting and I haven't done teshuvah yet, what does the regret do? It keeps me close to the aveira that I'm regretting. I'm beating myself up. I'm such a I'm not deserving of your kindness, and I'm beating myself up. But if a person's let go of the aveira, is not even thinking about it, and now he remembers it, it pushes him further away, propels him further away from the aveira. So that's why it's a very powerful lashon. He quotes from Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamed Aleph. I think it is. Is it Lamed Aleph? Number 13. Lamed Aleph, pasuk Yud Ches. After I did teshuvah, then I had regret. Now he says, "V'yayit alav." This was the pasuk I wanted to share with you last week, but I couldn't remember the exact lashon. V'yayit alav, yodea ta'alumais, the one who knows the hidden things, meaning Hashem knows a person's machshavas and the quality of that machshava, how real it really is, how sincere it is, how deeply is that gemira belev, that hachlata, that commitment. That's very powerful. Hashem is going to be made. He'll give testimony that the person has reached a point where I would never do that again. And every time he remembers it, it pushes him further away from the event. I can't believe I did that. Whereas if I'm beating myself up, which is much more popular, soon after the aveira, and I haven't really done teshuvah, it's a problem. That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is keeping me close to the aveira. I'm bad. I'll never change. Okay, but he should speak it out. Vidui. Right at the beginning of that, we're going to look at it when we do Vidui Dvarim in detail. We'll see that Vidui Dvarim in front of Talmid Chacham has been classic for thousands of years. It's not a chiddush of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman put it back on the map. The Baal Shem Tov put it back on the map. But it's a huge thing, and he's explaining to us the mechanics of why there's so much leverage. It burns out the Averas. It gives a person a completely different relationship to his Averas after he's spoken to a tzaddik and it's lifted off his bones. It's a completely new relief.
It says there in the Gemara from Rav Amram that the Eish left his body, and he said, "Ant Eish v'ani Besrei."
Right.
So
yes.
you see that from that vidu, if Nura Ba'amar was considered a vidu, right?
Yeah.
It was that it helped that the Yetzer Hara should actually leave him.
Yeah.
Not only be a tikkun for the chait, but also to help him in the future not to go back for the chait.
Yes. I'm not sure. I don't remember now if he made a deal that Hashem would not test him again? Was that, or am I mixing him
That
up
was,
with
Chisma, what was his name?
where they poked his eyes out?
Yeah.
Then Hashem sent a malach to be merab him, Raphael, and he refused. And until he said, if Hashem promises me never to put me through that again, then I'll accept to have my eyesight back. So it's astonishing. That these were Tzadikei Yesodei Olam who understood that if I'm in this world, it's not worth it if I'm going to succumb to the Yetzer Hara. So, yeah, thank you for reminding us of that. He said, I'm Aish and you're Aish, but I'm stronger than you. Okay, Zion. Should we give a stab at Zion? We've got 10 minutes.
Sure.
V'zeh Perush. So now this explains a pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Tes Zion pasuk Yudalet. There's two parts to the pasuk. He quotes the first one here, and later in the paragraph he's going to quote the rest of the pasuk. But both are very important. Chamat Melech Malachi Maves. The anger of the king, in reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he's angry because of the favors that are done in the king's palace, the whole world is his palace, and we anger him. Malachi Maves. So what is Hashem's anger? Those are the messengers of death. Messengers of death, they're the ones who are going to take out Nekama against me if I don't do tshuva in my lifetime. Ki chamaso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shvil HaMalchus shehishpil. Why is Hashem angry against anyone? For the Malchus that we diminished. In the original text of the Ksav Yad, it's also written, Mivazeh HaMalchus, we were Mivazeh the Malchus of Hashem, and we gave it over to the Goyim, Al Yedei Avonos, through our Averas. So Al Yedei Avonosav, it's through a person's Avonos, then the Averas that were done on purpose, knowing, not Lachis, but we knew they were Averas, and we created a switch in the Surah Osius. The combination of the letters of the Torah got switched around on the bones, and now Hashem's angry. So how are we going to appease Hashem? So the end of the same pasuk is the following words: Vish Chacham Ichaperena. Someone who is a man of wisdom, he's got the capacity to cause kapara, a sweetening and a wiping off of the avonos. And in the Bir Halikutim, he points out the Ish Chacham Ichaperena. The letter Ish, the last letter is Shin, the last letter of Chacham is Mem, and the last letter of Ichaperena is Hey. Spelled out the word Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the Tzaddik Emes, the Talmid Chacham par excellence. Someone who's on the level of a Chacham, he's got the capability of wiping out the anger of Hashem. And we're going to see how this works. So that means to say a Talmid Chacham. Chacham is referring to a Chacham or a Talmid Chacham. Chacham is the Rebbe of the Talmid Chacham. Bechinas Moshe, and this is a connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Who yechapeloi? It's Moshe Rabbeinu or the Talmid Chacham who will cause the kapara for the person. Moshe Kosov, and he takes now from Micha Perek Zayin Pasuk Ches. V'oiva al pesha le'she'eris nachalasoi. You have to add the word nachalasoi from the original text. I hope I'm not messing you around when I tell you which is the extra words. I don't know why they don't put them all into all the new editions. Is there a reason? Does anyone know?
Question is why the Rebbe then many times the Rebbe is using the words of the pasuk that are not written.
Right. So that's another parsha. But the question here is why, if they were
found the original Ksav Yad,
Has
right. So in the Hebrew version that Rabbi Kramer did, so he puts in a special brackets like this, all the words that were missing. The Talmid Chacham who bechinas Moshe. Sorry, I went too far ahead. Who yechaper? Moshe Kosov over al pesha l'shevis nachalasoi. He forgives for the pesha. Pesha is the worst because that means lahachis. L'shevis nachalasoi for the remainder of his nachala, and it's referring. L'shevis means, and the Gemara opens this up over there. It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that explains lemisha mesim atzmai kishirayim. He makes himself as though he's shirayim, leftovers. That means he's stripped himself of all gaiva, and that's what shirayim is referring to. So that Gemara is not in Sanhedrin. It's Rosh Hashanah Yud Zayin, Amud Aleph. So Rashi there says Peirush shirayim she'ein nechshavim. He doesn't consider himself important. Kach ein chashav b'enei atzmai. someone who's a Shirayim, he's like got nothing left of himself. It's the Eina Miskaya. He has no gaiva. Reb Hananel on that Gemara there, on the side says Eina Machshiv Atzmai Le'ikar. He doesn't consider himself Ikar. Rak L'Tafel. It's always second. It's always Tafel to the Ikar. So Moshe Rabbeinu had that level of complete anivus. Nimsa. So it comes out like this. Kushaba Lifnei Talmid Chacham. When a person comes in front of a real Talmid Chacham, or Moitzi called Tzurufav Lifnei Talmid Chacham, and now he brings out all the combination of letters in his Vidui Dvarim in front of the Talmid Chacham. The Talmid Chacham who bechinas Moshe. This Talmid Chacham is a bechina of Moshe. In the original text, it adds the word Mashiach. Shemeisim Asmo Kishirayim. He's on the level that he doesn't count himself as anything. K'moshe Kosov, as we know of Moshe Rabbeinu, that the pasuk itself is made Perek Yud Beis pasuk Gimel in the whole situation with Miriam and Aaron suspecting why is Moshe Rabbeinu greater? We're also in the Nevi'im. Hashem never told us to be purged from our spouse, so why Moshe? That was counted as Lashon Hara, and the pasuk is made on Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to write this pasuk down. He is extremely, extremely humble. The word ma'id, I saw this recently. I never saw this in the Chazal, but I saw it in the Chavetz Chaim, who's considered a Tana. That's one of the stories of the Dibukim that when the Chavetz Chaim sent two of his Talmidim, one was Elchanan Basman, to deal with a Dibuk. So they weren't getting very far. So they asked the Dibuk, "Have you heard of the Chavetz Chaim?" Said, "Yeah, of course I have." In Shemaim was considered like a Tana. So that's the only source I know of this. But in Kitzah, Sefer Mitzvah is a Katzah of the Chavetz Chaim. So he says that whenever the Torah uses the word ma'od, it means without limit. There's no end to it. So when you see the word V'ha'ish Moshe anav ma'od, it was like endless anivas. V'al yedei zeh nikra ish Chacham. It's because of his anivas that he gets the term, the medal ish Chacham, k'moshe kosov v'hachma m'ayin timatzeh. As a pasuk in Eov, Perek Havchei, pasuk Yud Beis. From where will you find Chachma? So you can read it as a question, from where will you find Chachma? And you can read the same three words as the answer to the question. You know where you're going to find Chachma? In someone who's nothing. He doesn't exist. He doesn't count himself as anything. That's where you're going to find real wisdom. And that is, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what gives this type of a Talmid Chacham. Obviously, it's not every Talmid Chacham, but this is what gives the Talmid Chacham the power to be mechaper, is that he's got anivus. The word avain, we know, is the most typical word that Rav Nachman uses. If I'm not mistaken, throughout Likutim Run, more than the word aveira or chet or pesha is avain. And interestingly, when the Chacham is the one who's mechaper, the avain shares the same letters as anav, meaning that a person is reduced to being an anav just by the vidui dvarim in front of the Chacham, and the Chacham himself has to be an anav in order to turn around the avain. So he's bringing the end of the same pasuk that it's the Chacham who is able to be mechaper. So this fits in very well with who Moshe Rabbeinu is. Let's see if I can, if you let me finish it off quickly to the end. Ubishvil zeh, it's because of this. She'itpalel Moshe al chet ha'egel. Who else could possibly have prayed for the worst betrayal in world history, where the Jewish people, within basically 40 days of being married to Kodesh Baruch Hu at the Chuppah of Har Sinai, went with another god, which was not really a god, it's the Egel. So the pasuk says in Perek Lamed Beis, pasuk Lamed Beis, in Parshas Kitisa, Ki im tisa chatoisam. So Moshe Rabbeinu, after he said mi Hashem Elai, and the Shevet Levi came and they wiped out almost 3,000 Yidden who were over the Avodah Zarah of the Egel. So then Moshe Rabbeinu told Klal Yisrael, I'm going to go back on Har Sinai, and see if I can get a full forgiveness for you. And now he speaks to Hashem, and he says to Hashem, Im tisach hatoisam, if you carry, tisach means carry, you carry their chet, meaning take it off their shoulders as a weight that they're carrying now for who knows how long. And you look at Rashi there, he says it was so bad that Hashem said, I'm salachti kidvarecha, but every single generation is going to get a little bit of the piranha of payment for this terrible betrayal of aluba kala zinta tachas baila. That's more in Shabbos Sadik base. Im tisach hatoisam, Hashem, if you carry off their avera, dim ayin, and if you don't, mechinina misifrecha asher ketavta, then wipe me out. Now, mechir is a complete erasement. There's no roshim left. And that's what mechila really is meant to be. More than slicha, mechila is a complete erasement. There's no roshim whatsoever. If you don't take their avera on your shoulders away from them, then wipe me out. So now Rav Nachman explains what does this really mean. So I'm going to say it outside very quickly. Moshe Rabbeinu is an anav. The only person that Rav Nachman just explained is qualified to really help someone lose, so to speak, retrieve all their favors and take them out of them and get a kapara for it, is someone who's such a big anav that he's called that Chacham can do that type of a kapara. So now he's bringing the proof from this, because ki zeh min hanimna. It's simply impossible. Shelo yavai la'adam ezer godless. For a human being to have some arrogance, when he hears his compliments, how does he not feel? Yeah, okay, magili. Yeah, I did work very hard. Yeah, I worked very hard on that deal. I worked very hard on my mitzvahs. And before you know it, how is it possible for anyone to get a compliment and not feel something? Kol shekain, how much more so? Kshamelech gadol mishabech u'mifaya es adam. When the king is the one, you can't argue with the king. You can't say, no, I'm not so. You can't argue with the king. The king is saying it, and he's not doing as Khalifas. A king doesn't need anything from you. So he's saying it because it's MS. So if the king is saying, it's Mishabeach, he's praising you, Umithaya, and he's extolling your praise of a human being, it's simply impossible. He's not going to have some arrogance. So someone who's going to hear it from the king himself, he has to have such a complete cancellation of who he is, and 100%, not 99.9, 100% attribute anything he's accomplished as a pure matana to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why the Lashon Hazal gave us in Shabbos davening is Yismach Moshe, not be a Gias Chelkai. He worked very hard. No. But he saw everything he ever accomplished as a matana. And the Ramchal says, I think in Perek Chav Beis, in Mesilas Yesharim, he says, everything that a person is masig, eino ela chesed kel alav. Anything that a person is masig in ruchnius is a pure gift. It's only a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not owed. So, aval tzarich lezeh bitul kol hargasho yisrav. A person needs complete cancellation of any feelings whatsoever, or any. He doesn't even smile. His body doesn't react. He gets no physical reaction from a compliment. As a yachal adam lishmer shivchai, such a person can hear his praise, and he won't come to any arrogance. Come on, Moshe Rabbeinu, as was the case of Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Shira kasub b'Torah. A person will see it's written in the Torah. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu sees himself, and he had to write it down. Every single time it says Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. Vayem Hashem el Moshe. I once made a count. I never checked it, but I made my own count once going through Chumash 178 times. It's written in the Chumash. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe, Vayem Hashem el Moshe. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to write that down. So the king is speaking to him directly. I think it was 8 times Hashem spoke directly to Aaron HaKohen, but 178 to Moshe Rabbeinu. I think it was 8 times or maybe 10 times to Yeshua directly. No one got this type of a praise. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to write this down, and he had to write down the from anyone who ever walked on the face of the earth, and it's still got to be the same honor at the end of the writing it. No heritage no feeling whatsoever that. Look, I'm not going to argue with God. I mean, nothing. V'Yisrael Kairim b'chol yain b'Torah shivcho shel Moshe. Every day. Now, this Rav Atia points out in the Midbar they had lots of scrolls. The Torah was given at Har Sinai, and at Har Sinai Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the entire Torah from Bereshis till Matan Torah. So they had scrolls for all of Bereshis and the first 20 prokim of Shmois, if we're going to call it in prokim. So the rest of the Torah, as it unfolded, was written in the Midbar. So they had scrolls, and they were chazering the scrolls all the time. All Targum mitzvahs was given at Har Sinai, so they were chazering Targum mitzvahs. But the actual storyline of the Chumash, that they were chazering in the scrolls as it was written, and then recorded by Moshe Rabbeinu, and everyone had to have their own Sefer Torah. So now it came out that throughout the Midbar for 40 years, they weren't learning that week Parsha that hadn't been fully legislated yet, but they were studying every day the Torah, and all over the places. Vayidaber Hashem and Moshe, Vayim Hashem and Moshe. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew that they're saying his name all the time. Hashem's speaking to him all the time. So Moshe Rabbeinu himself is writing this shvach in the Torah. Regardless was there. He had no sense of, I'm important because of this. I'm better because of this. Zero. Moed means without limit. Through his incredible humility, that's what gave him the power to actually wipe out the avon, this terrible avera of the egel, because the pasuk says so, and the pasuk dictates reality. So this was Moshe Rabbeinu's argument when he said macheni, when he said, erase me, v'im ayin. And if you don't, that means if I have not yet, if you don't forgive them, then ayin, if you're not going to forgive them, you're going to carry away their avera, then you are demonstrating, Hashem, I don't have the anivus necessary to stand up and be mechaper for them, because I'm not an anab. But you wrote it in your Torah. So you can't go against what you've written. So if I'm not that anab, I can't be mechaper. Therefore, my request is, you got to erase me. Please. So I don't come to any godless. The Baal Shem Tov, he said, one thought of arrogance, it's not worth being in this world for. It's so hard to appreciate what we're talking about. That the person's madrigas could all collapse from that one hero of arrogance. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, you told me, you put it in the Torah, if I can't be mechaper, then I'm not the Chacham that has the anivus to be able to mechaper for the egel. You got to. It's almost putting Hashem into an yeah. I'm seeing and hearing all the time. What normal person can stand up to hearing that level of constant praise? And I know that this is a promise you promised me, Perigud test, Pasuk test in Parshas Yisrael, that v'yaminu b'cha le'olam. They're going to believe in you forever. So I know that these psukim are going to be read by Klal Yisrael by millions and millions and millions, billions over thousands of years forever. How am I going to stand up? Sheishma sipo shivchai v'lo yitgaer. Im lo anav gadol. The only way a person can stand up to that is if they're a huge anav. Then you have to take their avera away. Like you say that you will remove the pesha of the remainder of your people in reference to someone who is a shevis. He considers himself nothing. That's why you'll remove the pesha. I'll just quickly close. I'm sorry, I'm a bit over time. This is a pasuk in Lamed Gimel in Dvarim, right at the end of the Torah. Perek Lamed Gimel pasuk Hey, Vayhi Bishurun Melech. This is in reference to the Targum Yonasan explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Moshe Rabbeinu Melech al Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the first king of the Jewish people. Yeshua after him was also a king, but not the king that was anointed after Shmuel Hanavi was requested by the people to anoint a king, but Hashem anointed Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's the lashon of Bishurin. Hainu shemalchus alav l'shasha. The malchus was elevated to its original source because Moshe Rabbeinu can bring everything to the King of Kings. To Moshe Kazav, the Anavim Yirshu Aretz. The humble ones will inherit the land. Land is ground, it's the earth, the soil. So it's a lashon of Anivos. Ve'eretz hu dina de malchusa. The law of the land is the law. Moshe Kazav ve'eretz mitkaimema loy. What will rise up against him to take revenge for those who abused the malchus of Hashem by giving it over to the nations through doing averas. So Hashem is going to take revenge, so to speak, by having the land take revenge. How's that? When a person is buried in the ground, it's a huge kapara. Death is a huge kapara. The Hilchas Teshuvah talks about all the averas that a person can be zoicha to after death, and then in the cave itself, there's kibbut hakeva, which is not very pleasant. Chaim Kramer, I didn't know this until just a few weeks ago. He told me his father was exhumed from where he was buried in New York to Eretz Yisrael just a few years ago, and it was a complete body. Complete body. He was orphaned at the age of 6, Chaim Kramer, but his father had a complete body. He was brought to, I think, Hamanuches, if I'm not mistaken, and so I said, how was that? So he said, my father, he was 6 years old when he passed away, but he must have learned this from his mother, Mrs. Bacon, I knew her very well. So he never had any jealousy for anyone. If a person leaves this world without any kinna, the body is 100% intact. So there's a lot of death is a huge process. There's chibut hakeva, there's machale chabala. It's not a pleasant, but it's a process of purification. So a very close friend of mine, I didn't get permission to say his name, but he was told by Rabbi Nissim David that if you learn the Sefer Minchas Yehuda, you can really it can be, I don't want to say depressing, but it can be really, a person get really down on themselves because the din v'cheshbon for the averas is so huge that a person can really be like frightened. How will I ever be able to stand up to this? So Rabbi Nissim David Kivak told us, close friends of mine, said, if you're makusha to the tzaddik emes, you don't have to worry about any of this. Because it's like the tzaddik is vidu dvarim, which when we get to, we're going to learn, is lav dafka. It's best, of course, in front of the actual tzaddik himself. But if you go to the cave of the tzaddik, and in some cases even learning his farm, when you're saying his words, it's as though his words are coming back alive. So it's like you're talking directly to him. It's we'll learn it Be'ezrat Hashem in Kuv Tzaddik Beis, I think, in later on. It's not a very long Torah. The surah of the tzaddik is in his Torah. So
you don't have the bushes when you go to a caver and you say quietly, you know.
Yeah.
It's not so. Halavai, we should have the bushes that we should.
Right.
We need to have.
From Nachman Fried, he said that he once went, and he went because his father needed him to be there, but he was so embarrassed that he took a sefer like this that the
wow, in between him.
Should make eye contact with the tzien.
And then he said by mistake he saw the tzien and he completely burst out crying to the point that he fell asleep on the tzien.
Wow.
His father had to wake him up and think.
Wow.
And that it really changed his trajectory then in his life.
Very interesting.
A different perspective.
Right.
But yeah, it has to do with awareness. It's interesting that where's the tie to the Inyan of Eish, this whole thing that Chacham is Eish.
Right.
Because we know really Eish is more like Gaiva, right? Eish HaGaiva is the... But also Eish is Ebe Mamish.
Yeah.
It has
Eish,
both.
Eish goes both ways. It can be used for destruction, so to speak.
It could be iron, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
It could be iron or...
Right. It's interesting. Science is very slowly catching up with Hashem's reality, because Hashem created Olam HaEmes and Olam HaSheker, and in Olam HaEmes, there's no such thing as a wasted thought or wasted mitzvah. Nothing's ever wasted, and all the averas, they get fixed. It's an Olam HaTikun, so they eventually will get fixed. So it's interesting that in the world of science, and this they've agreed for a long, long time, and Einstein really put it all together, there is a law of conservation of energy and matter, which means that no matter what happens to physical matter, it's never lost. It may transform into something else, like fire would transform something into ashes, but there's no such thing as a change. It's a transformation, but it doesn't get lost. There's no such thing as getting lost. It's impossible. It's like water, it can transform into vapor with heat, and cold, it can transform into ice, solid, but it's still water. So there's no such thing as anything that's lost in the physical world, of course, in the spiritual world too, because they're parallels. Oh dear.
Next week again, Hashem is 6 p.m.
Yeah. Okay, so I went over time, but I wanted to finish Zion, and then we can start with the Eon.